Well, they're dropping like flies. Another Heritage radio personality in Edmonton has retired. Mark Connolly is my guest today.
Reluctantly.
This podcast, reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. In 2025 and 2026, almost 60% of Canadian mortgages will come up for renewal. If yours is one of them, you need to have a good mortgage broker on your side. Contact ThompsonMortgages.com and tell them you heard about them here on this podcast.
Reluctantly.
Heritage. Nice.
What you don't think 40 plus years is heritage?
I guess you're right.
And the thing is, I mean, and then there were two, I think, Todd James and me.
Right. Both guys I worked with when you were young men.
Yes. when we were all young men. Do you remember?
True.
What were you there in '86 when I arrived at K97?
Yeah, and I think, were you 19 years old at the time?
I think I had
86?
just turned 20. It was
Yeah.
So maybe I had just turned 21. I arrived in February of late January of 1986.
Yeah, and I'd started there in August of 85. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it relatively at the same time, and because I got there and Todd James basically trained me. I was there doing 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. that coveted shift.
Oh man, what a tough shift that would gotta be.
Well, the thing is, you think back to it, 1986. That was, it was, coming up on the heyday of K97. We had Phillips and Allen in the morning.
Yep.
Rob Brown doing middays.
Right. Yeah.
Ray Grover was doing afternoon drive. Chris Burt was doing evenings. And then you had the cast of knuckleheads doing swing and overnight. So that would have been Todd James, Carl Douglas.
Right, Carl.
I think Tim Clausen came later. And then I got hired to do 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then I would stick around and write for the morning show, write for Phillips and Allen. Then you and I would cross paths because you were often doing the open circuit.
Yep.
Then afternoon news or fill in or something like that. But
yeah, I did a bit of everything then. Yeah. I was trying to do more sports if they would let me. And I also helped out with Brian Hall on the AM side and CJCA. So that was always a great opportunity too.
So you and I are roughly the same age. What are you? You're 61?
I just turned 65.
Oh, you just turned 65.
Yeah. When I officially retired from CBC, it was 10 days after or 12 days after my birthday.
So was that the big what had the big bearing on it? The fact that you were 65, or was that the plan, or you just?
Yeah, that was it was sort of I was ready, and it's better for you from their pension point of view to retire on the month of your birthday. So I figured 65, time for me to move on and do other things and give somebody else a chance. And I was ready to get away from the early mornings.
Now, did you say it's better for you or better for them that you retire on your birth month?
Better for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that's the case, because if you're you're a July baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
July 19th.
So you retired on July 31st.
Yep.
So that's 7 months in. What if I'm a December?
You're better off. You're better off to retire on your birthday for whatever reason. I don't know, or the month of your birthday. I don't even know. It's some pension thing that they work out that kind of it doesn't matter probably that much, but if you can square it that way, they said that's the way to do it. So
okay.
I thought middle of the summer, good for me.
And your kids are grown and gone now?
Yep. The oldest, Patrick, is 33, going on 34. The youngest is 29. He's still, that's Jack. He's in Calgary going to U of C. But Patrick, fully employed, on his way.
Yeah. Well, what's Jack doing? He's 29 and still going to school? Or is he becoming?
Yeah, he went late, and he's doing a computer science degree. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And Patrick ended up. You said he's fully employed, and what's the line of work is he in?
Well, he works at CBC, as a matter of fact. Yeah, he's the senior assignment producer, so he's one of the bosses of reporters and whatnot. over at
You're
CBC Edmonton. Yeah.
wow, that's terrific. So
Yeah.
3 generations of CBC.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. From the janitors to the announcers to the managers.
It is pretty remarkable. I did not know that about you, that your father had a janitorial company and
Yeah.
had a contract, I'm guessing, for to clean the CBC building, and you nosed around and helped him out from time to time. That's not something I knew up until recently. Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think
I was 14, 15 when I was picking up garbage at CBC on the south side or on 75th Street when it was there. Not far from our house. We lived in Otwell, so I just rode my bike over there every afternoon after school to do that. And, obviously you're walking through the newsroom, and they did their 6 o'clock news in their newsroom at the time. And so you got a chance to see it live, and you go into the control rooms, you see all the cameramen. At the time, they were on film. So it was quite a fascinating place to be for a teenager. Yeah, it was cool.
and the place on 75th Avenue, so you would have worked there as well as
Yeah, 75th Street and 90th Avenue.
or so yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
75th Street. And then when CBC moved downtown, what year was that?
2003,
Okay.
2002, something like that.
So
Yeah,
you worked in both buildings then.
I
Uh,
did. Yeah, yeah.
when the new cap properties, when K97 and whatever CFCW, and when we moved from 99th Street into West Edmonton Mall, we had the opportunity to buy the CBC building. The company did.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was $1 million.
Oh, it's pretty cheap for a building.
It was super cheap for a building, and I thought, what? Why not? It's already got
Yeah,
the floors, or you could have had a radio station on each floor, and the sales
it's
department and
true.
reception and everything like that. But no, we had to go to West Edmonton Mall. Jesus
Well, when
Christ.
you and I worked at K97, it was 108th Street and what,
Yeah,
103rd Avenue,
102nd Avenue, 108th Street.
102nd
Yeah,
Avenue. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Spot.
Yeah, it was okay. It's right downtown. Yeah, if you could get there.
Yeah,
Well, it wasn't until they had the next parking lot over that
right.
was parking for everybody. But I always laughed at the old building on 108th Street, 102nd, 103rd Avenue, or whatever it was, because the control room, remember, had that little window in it,
Yep.
which was bulletproof.
Yeah.
But so if anybody wanted to get in there, it was impossible. But if you walked 6 steps east, there was these big, gigantic plate glass, ordinary double pane windows that you could
Yep.
throw a rock or whatever chair through and get in any old way right into the newsroom, and then you had free reign of the whole friggin' building.
It was a fun place to work. I mean, the first place I worked full time at a radio station was CJOK in Fort McMurray. When I
Right.
first got there, it was a lot like WKRP. It was just chaos. I mean, CJC and K97 were much more professional, but at the same time, there was a lot of fun going on. And Terry Strain, who was the general manager, kind of was the leader of that often. And I know you probably know, obviously, that he recently passed away, but
Yeah.
he was a great boss. He was so much fun. He was amazing.
We ran into a lot of really good people in the K97. I mean, and just running through the staff, the on-air
Yeah.
staff at that time. And now I didn't even touch on the newsroom, because
Right.
you had Sharon Mallon, Randy Kilburn,
Yeah.
Robin
Well,
Allen.
Robin was the news director who hired me.
Right.
So, and he was he was so funny. I never had a boss who was as much fun as him. He was just, when I went to apply for the job and my interview, I think he was wearing cutoffs and a tank top. And I was like, oh, okay. I got all dressed up, not quite in a suit, I don't think, but I was pretty dressed up. I thought, okay, well, rock radio, here we go.
Yeah. And well, yeah, the fact that he was the news director and co-hosting a morning show with Brad Phillips at the same time was also
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. It was a nutty place, man. And we would go, and I'm not sure how often the newsroom would be included in our production meetings on Wednesdays, I believe, at lunch. But then
Mm.
we would, after the lunch after the meetings, we would go over to the Fox and Hounds. Is that what it
Oh,
was
yeah.
called?
Yeah. That was on 9th Street.
109th Street, yeah, on the
Yeah.
bottom of that
Yeah.
big high rise.
Yep.
which Todd James lived in that high rise for the longest time.
How convenient.
Yeah. So we would go, well, yeah, it was half a block down the alley to work for him. It was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, after our staff meetings, our production meetings at Wednesdays at noon, we would all go over the Fox and Hounds, and we'd sit there and have lunch.
Lunch, yes.
And then it was at that time that I think I was doing 6 to 10 at night. Well, I don't know. Some of the times walking home from the Fox and Hounds,
Arrived after lunch.
it was like, a CNI dog sort of thing. And I don't know how I got through a 4-hour shift, but yeah, there was more than just fish and chips and club sandwiches that were consumed at those.
That was a different time, Terry.
Yeah, it sure was. You talked about the newsroom and working closely with Brian Hall, another Heritage legend in broadcast.
Total legend for sure.
Who else was in CJ? Bill Matheson, Glenn Yost.
Yeah. Well, the Bill and Bill show.
Yeah.
Bill Matheson and Bill. Who was the other Bill? They were great. They hosted I think this was midday call-in show, and it was very funny. They were really charming guys. They had an interesting way
from the Crystal Gondola.
Yes, that's right. The hoi polloi had all these things, and I didn't even realize that Matheson was a meteorologist till later. And of course, he started doing the weather at Global. I don't know which came first, to be honest, but what a gentleman he was.
He was down in the States for a while.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Forgot about that.
Not long ago, I did a podcast with Gordon Linda, formerly of ITV and Global. And they just touched briefly on some of the stuff that Bill Matheson had achieved before going to Global. And he was like meteorologist of the year or something for the entire planet and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Remember that. Yeah. But I worked part-time at ITV as well. Do you remember James Monsees?
Yeah.
So James was also in the newsroom.
Yeah, he was in the K97 newsroom, right?
Yeah. He was a little bit younger than me. We'd worked together at CKGY in Red Deer. I want to say he might be 5 or 6 years younger than me. And he came in there and he was doing news and whatnot. And then one day he shows up wearing a sports jacket and a tie. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm going to audition at ITV for a sportscaster job." I said, "Oh, I didn't know about that." He goes, "Well, yeah, go get a jacket and you come with me." I said, "All right." So I went and got suited up. And every radio sports guy in the city, and at the time, every radio station had one, was there auditioning. And he knew the boss's son. He played hockey with him because James, I think, was a goalie in junior hockey. And so, I kind of had the inside edge, and we all did our auditions. I hadn't never done TV before. But at the end of the day, James got the job. It was a weekend anchoring job, the sports. But they called me and they said, "Well, we like your audition. Would you like to come in and fill in once in a while and maybe go to games and do post game?" I said, "Sure." So that was my original sort of intro into television, part-time at ITV.
After that, how did you just spend a couple of years at K97? Or were you just there 3 or 4 years?
I was there so I got there in 85 and I left in 89, like February of 89.
And that was to go do sports reporting full-time at CBC, or was it?
No, K97 fired me.
Well, what happened there?
Exactly. Well, what happened was that I started working, I switched from ITV to CBC in December of 88. They offered me the weekend job at CBC. So I basically started working 7 days a week. And they said to me, after a couple of months, they said, "That's not sustainable." I'm like, "Well, I think I can handle what's sustainable, whatever. It's not like I'm crushing rocks. I'm just, they said, "Well, we don't think you should work at CBC anymore." And at that point, I thought to myself, I don't know, being the sports and news guy at a rock radio station as compared to being a sports anchor on a television station, I think this is maybe more my direction. So I came home and I said to Allison, I think I'm going to get fired because they don't want me to work these two jobs. And a month later, that's what happened. But what happened was that because I was then available, CBC started using me more. And for a few years, I was casual, as they say. I was freelance. I did the weekends and then I did all kinds of other things. And then it did eventually work into a full-time job. So,
what were the other things you were doing in the meantime before it became a full-time gig?
Do you remember Canadian Football Network? There was a time when the CFL went off of CBC and CTV and they didn't have a network. So they cobbled together all these independent places like ITV to run the games. And I was well connected with a bunch of friends I'd gone to Nate with who were producing that. So I said to CBC, I'm only here part-time. I'm doing weekends. Can I also do these things, even though it's for another station? And they're like, yeah, sure. But it was as a producer doing features and stuff. I'd interview Eskimo players at the time, of course, about things, put together features for the league. The other thing I would do was I worked for CBC Radio doing what they called packs. So I do a little report on something that's going around the city, and they would run it on their morning show. Or I also produced independent videos for nonprofits or for businesses and that sort of thing. And I worked through Quilla, and I think you'll be well aware of what Quilla was back in the day. Yeah, Don Metz. So Don Metz basically taught me how to do these self-produced little items commercially. So I was doing a bit of everything at the time.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. Did you know that 60% of all Canadian mortgages are set to renew in 2025 and 2026? Is yours one of them? If so, don't just DocuSign that email from whatever lender is holding your mortgage right now. Contact Mike or John at ThompsonMortgages.com and find out if they can find you a more favorable financial situation. Rates are different now than they were 5 years ago. It'll have an impact on your monthly payment. Should you be on a fixed or a variable term? Should you stay where you are? Or maybe move to another lender for your next term? These are all questions that can easily be answered by ThompsonMortgages.com at no cost to you. The lender pays. You benefit from the service and the great advice of the Thompson Mortgage team. Contact them through ThompsonMortgages.com and tell them you heard about them on the Reluctantly podcast.
Reluctantly.
Were you also doing theater, or was that just the one-time thing where you met Allison?
Allison and I met in Greece. Yeah. Famous story. Not the country, but the musical. And the way that happened was that I was in Fort McMurray. She came up to Fort McMurray having just graduated from a BFA in acting at the U of A. And she was doing this summer teaching job with the city in drama. And they said to her, if you appear in the musical Grease, we will give you free room at the piano college. She said, okay, great. So I get a free room. I got a job. I do the musical. It's fun. And then the guy who was director said to me, we want somebody from the radio station to play Vince Fontaine, the DJ, because you hear the voice all through the musical, and then you're in a couple of scenes at the end. Would you like to do that? I said, sure. So I was playing rugby at the time, so I'd go to rehearsal after rugby practice in my short shorts, and that's how Alice and I met. I'm pretty sure it was the short shorts that got her.
Of course. Yes, I'm sure.
So, yeah, and that's how we met. No, I didn't really do any theater after that, although I did take a theater acting scenes at, I think it was Northern Light Theater, just to get the feel for what she was doing, because she was a professional actor for about 10 years, and I'd go to her things, and I thought, well, I'll get a little bit of insight into what she does. So
I'm trying to remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did she not appear in some productions at the Mayfield Dinner Theater and whatnot?
I think she did maybe one there, but she was in probably every local theater, Northern Light, Theater Network, the Citadel. She did actually a pilot for a CBC show that didn't go anywhere. It was called Wildcat. It was about oil and gas. But yeah, I mean, being an actor in Edmonton, always a bit of a struggle.
A Wildcat about an oil and gas wife who falls for a rugby player in short shorts.
That would have been a great pitch. You should have produced that one.
So you guys met, and then she started following you around through the remarkably reliable, sustainable media fiasco.
Well, I actually followed her because she came back to Edmonton, and I decided, okay, I got to move to Edmonton. So instead of, I was working at CJOK still, I was the sportscaster. I was also doing sales. I took a job at Kissin in sales of radio. And I lasted 3 months because I hated it. And that's when I got to CKGY in Red Deer, because I just quit one day and then went down to CKGY, and they hired me like the next day. So it was a funny transition. I was only there 6 months before I came back and got the job at K97.
So you get into sports at K97, eventually CBC, doing sports on here. What happened? Yep. What happened? I kind of might know the answer, but what happened to the sportscaster?
In Edmonton? Yeah.
In
Generally,
general,
in general.
yeah.
Well, TSN and Sportsnet, right? And obviously the streaming of things. I think that when I started at CBC, we did what was called sports syndication. And the reason I had a weekend job, and you know who else worked there was John Sack-Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He worked part-time. I think he was just coming out of university at the time. He would spend the day watching sports, shot listing as we call it, writing down the important things that happened in a game, whether it's football, hockey, etc. Then he would edit together a piece. I would come in the afternoon and I would voice all those pieces, and then we would send them across the country. So any other sportscasts on the weekend who wanted an Eskimo Saskatchewan game, for instance, would run that piece, or if it was an Oiler Flames game, they could run those highlights, and they would have my voice on it. And that's how they paid for their weekend show, because the other CBC things would use a bit of their budget to fund this whole syndication thing. And then eventually, actually, I think John hosted there for a while. But so that was happening, and people were running highlights and that sort of thing. But then TSN comes along, and they're doing everything and doing all the highlights and that sort of thing. And slowly, it just ground down that if you were going to get your sports highlights, you were going to TSN and then later Sportsnet. And what was the other? There was another one, The Score. These places, these sports specialty channels, I think they really, for a lot of reasons, killed local sportscasts.
And it's too bad,
Yeah.
Johnny Sachs. John was the DJ at my wedding reception.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had his company going. So, but yeah, I think back to watching you and Sexsmith and Monsees and Dutch and Perry Solkowski and all those guys. The importance of the local sports coverage was huge. And I mean, my daughter ended up on local sports coverage just for synchronized swimming. And
Cool.
You have no idea, obviously, how proud that made us as a family and stuff.
I'm sure.
It was important in that vein for everybody. So,
well, when the Oilers the last couple of years have been in the Stanley Cup final and had these runs, it just shows how big that can be for Edmonton beyond everybody who's fanatical about sports or fanatical about the Oilers. It touches everybody. And that's why I think that local stations really should think about covering that stuff on a weekly basis. It gets so many eyeballs. It just is like you look at anybody who covers the Oilers and is on social media. As soon as you're doing something with the Oilers, your numbers go through the roof because everybody wants to hear what you had to say or where you were or what you found out. And it's there's a great deal of interest even beyond Edmonton.
For you, professional or amateur sport, which one was the one that just you got just super jacked reporting on it or presenting it?
Well, I mean, I was lucky enough to go to 12 Olympics during my career. And so that's, it is amateur sport, but it basically has changed professional. I think most of the athletes in the Olympics are professional in one way or the other. Maybe not the way we would consider them like hockey players who play in the NHL in a league and they have a contract for a specific team. That's different from, say, downhill skier who is sponsored by, 10 different companies. And so he can make $1 million a year. He or she makes $1 million a year through those sponsorships because they keep winning on World Cups. Every sport has its different sort of way it's sorted out professionally, right? So most of those athletes are professional now. But I always loved the Olympics. And for the most part, I covered cycling and bobsleigh. There again, two completely different sports from a professional point of view. Cyclists are making, some of them making tens of millions of dollars, some of them making zero. So it runs the gamut. Whereas bobsleigh is pretty much a sport funded by governing bodies and countries, and not even that well. A lot of the bobsledders in Canada are paying to play. In other words, they have to find their own sponsorship so they can afford to be on the team. So, I mean, I love that. I enjoyed that. That was a great opportunity to travel the world because for the first 10 Olympics, I would go to the place and I could run them down. First starting in Atlanta and then Nagano, Japan, and then Sydney, Salt Lake City, Athens, Torino, Beijing. Then CTV took over for a couple Olympics. And then I was back in Sochi and then Rio. And then I was supposed to, and then South Korea. And then Tokyo happened and COVID. And they said, okay, we're not going to travel to Tokyo. Everybody's going to do it from Toronto. And then they discovered, boy, that's a lot cheaper than sending everybody overseas. And the last 2 Olympics I did were from Toronto, just watching it on a monitor. Not as much fun, but still exciting to call Olympic Games. Now, at the same time, I covered the Oilers, went to Stanley Cup finals, and I went to lots of Grey Cups. But, gradually, especially in Edmonton, the Oilers have taken over the scene, right? They are so dominant because of the NHL and people just wanting that elite experience, I guess, or they're just big fans, that there's just not as much coverage or as many people to go around to cover, say, the Alberta Junior Hockey League, where I did play-by-play for a while, or to cover university sports. It just doesn't happen as much as when I was sort of in the middle of it.
Well, and the idea that you've got probably the best player of the last 2 generations, or possibly
Yep.
ever, that's suiting up for your local team has a lot to do with it, because it generates so much interest. It's
Absolutely.
it's like the Taylor Swift factor kind of thing that Kansas City's got going with Travis Kelce, right? All of a
Exactly.
all of a sudden, there's all these new Kansas City Chief fans, and they're all 14-year-old girls.
Isn't it strange?
Yeah, but when you
Yeah.
get somebody that's got that kind of profile and that kind of ability, as Connor McDavid does, then you can't help but draw attention, and it's gonna
Yep.
draw attention, both good and bad, from all over the planet, wherever they play hockey.
I also think that as a sports reporter, I always consider myself a journalist. So I was, I was going for the story. What is the story? And not so much coverage of game to game lineup changes and things like that. So there's plenty of those great stories within many different venues of sports and amateur sports. And I think that anybody who wanted to be involved and doing their own thing, because there's lots of opportunities, say, for young people to create their own YouTube channel and sort of focus on a specific thing. I think if you became a really good storyteller and told those stories, I think you're going to get a lot of eyeballs on them. And I think that's always valuable as well.
Well, and that's why everybody and their dog's got a podcast these days.
Yep.
There's 4.5 million podcasts out there. And mind
But
you,
somebody told me that a great majority of them don't make it past like 3 episodes.
three episodes, and even less make it past 3 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been doing yours?
A year.
Great.
So it's something that people have been saying that I should be doing for the last 10 years, and I always thought, why? I do a daily radio show. Why do I want to work harder?
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it because it's more of a long form opportunity. I get to talk to people that I wouldn't otherwise talk to
Right.
I'm not going to call you up, Mark, and say, "Hey, you just retired from 12 years of competing against me on the K97 morning show. Do you want to come and be my guest and talk
Right.
about your retirement and your career and stuff?" It's not going to happen. But in
No.
this kind of situation, it can, because we're long time acquaintances, and it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
I found it funny that because I was going to ask you to run through your Olympic cities that you've been to in covering the Olympics and the games, and I was going to just say, can you rattle them off? And you did. By Jesus, you probably did it in yearly
It
order
was
too.
chronological order right there.
So
that's the only way I can remember them. Yeah.
96 was Atlanta, was it not?
Yeah.
So how do you, when they phone you up and say, okay, we want you to cover the Olympics, we're going to give you bobsleigh and luge and downhill skiing and cycling. Were you an enthusiast of any of those sports or participant or anything like that prior?
Well, the way it happened is in 96, I had been part of CBC's coverage of the Canada Winter Games in Grand Prairie in 95. That's where I made connections with all the people who did the Olympics, because they brought in pretty much their Olympic staff to do the Canada Games. So it was a pretty good production. And then you get to know people, and you know who is the boss and who's doing what, and you say to them, hey, I'd like to go to the Olympics if it's possible. And, it's not like you get a choice to say, well, I know about this sport, I'll do that. You don't care. You don't care. So they called me in the fall of 95 and said, it was my boss in Calgary, because we didn't have a boss in Edmonton at the time for whatever reason. They'd left. They were waiting to hire somebody. But he called me and he said, Mark, I'm just going to call, and they want you to do the Olympics. What do you say? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And I remember that moment, because I actually stood up. I was in the newsroom holding the phone. I'm looking around like, does anybody else know that my life just changed? Like, look at this, right? And I remember that feeling. It was such a great feeling, and just because you don't get it that often in your life, where that's, that actually maybe this changes everything. Maybe this is going to be something really special. And then I phoned Allison, and we had a very emotional, cry on the phone about it. I mean, really exciting. And then what happened is they brought me to 96 as a reporter, and they said, yourself, Brenda Irving, and Karen Larson, who are two colleagues of mine from around the country. Karen was in Vancouver, Brenda in Toronto. We all worked locally, and they said, we're going to bring the three of you. We're going to have you report on the Olympics. We might send you out different days to do different things. I said, all right, that's great. Sounds good. And then while I was there, they sent me to tennis, and they actually had a broadcast position there, which you don't have at every event. But it's a broadcast position is basically, headphones and a microphone at a spot looking over the court. So I went and sat up there and chatted with somebody back in the control room, and they said, we're going to get you to call a few games. I was totally unprepared to call tennis. So I had to do a little bit of research as to, there's certain things you say and don't say in every sport. As, you're calling a game, it's 30-all, it's not 30-30, right? There's different little things you got to know. And if you don't know them, people are listening know you don't know. But as it went, I got to cover a lot of tennis while I was there. And we ended up calling the gold medal match of the women's for like 2 hours. And I actually recruited a color commentator. And I was sitting next to, and I'm not sure if you'll know this name, but Bud Collins. He was with NBC, and he was a legendary tennis announcer, along with Mary Carrillo, who is still doing it. Mary Carrillo. I literally sitting right next to him like this, the two of us sort of elbow to elbow, and it was a fantastic experience. He was such a nice guy, and he gave me lots of tips. So I got to do that in 96. Then in 98, they said, we don't have any room for you. Winter games are smaller. There's nothing going on. And then in September of that year, Ken Daniels was a play-by-play announcer for Hockey Night in Canada. He was supposed to go do women's hockey at the Olympics in 98. But in the fall of 97, he got hired by the Detroit Red Wings to be their play-by-play announcer, which he did for the next 25 years. So they had to move somebody else into the women's hockey. So they decided Mark Lee would do the women's hockey. And they called me and said, okay, Mark Lee was supposed to do bobsleigh. Do you want to do it? I'm like, yes, of course. And so that's how I got bobsleigh. Just, there you go. Oh, you're also going to do luge. I'm like, all right. So I had to find out all about bobsleigh and luge. So that's how I got to that. And then in 2000, they said, we got an opening for cycling. And I'm like, yeah, count me in. And I did cycling. And after that, it was just back and forth between the two. So, yeah.
Reluctantly.
Today's show is brought to you by The Terry Evans Show with Pete Potipko on Edmonton's Classic Rock, K97. You can listen in the Edmonton area at 97.3 on your FM dial and online anywhere in Canada at k97.ca.
Reluctantly.
I think it was Cam Tate article mentioned that you had been at 12 Olympics covering them. And I thought, 12 Olympics, that's 48 years. That can't possibly be, and it's both. Yeah, so every 2 years. So.
Exactly. Well, I was like, that happened in 96, because they had the 92 Olympics and they were supposed to be 96, but instead they had the 94 Olympics and started rotating them.
Yeah.
Because 92 would have been both summer and winter, I think,
right,
in that 1 year.
And then what, 94 was Lillehammer or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then 96, yeah.
So you're doing luge and bobsleigh and cycling and tennis and the sports that they're not the mainstream sports, but having the opportunity to, like you said, you do the research on it, and then you end up being an educator as well through your coverage. And it's funny you mentioned the people sitting beside you at that first go at tennis. I was going to ask you about your partners for some of the sports that you were working with. Who are some of the memorable ones, some of the ones that you really respected, learned from, or were able to teach? Because I'm sure that a lot of times if they are a past athlete or a past participant, they're not a presenter professionally, right, on television or radio or anything like that. So it kind of goes back and forth between you and your color commentator, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the way it is. They're teaching me something about the sport. I'm trying to teach them something about broadcasting. And a lot of them would come into it with very little training at all. I guess my first real long-term relationship as a color commentator was Dave McEachern. Now, I had called his gold medal in 1998 in bobsleigh. So he had won it with Pierre Luters from Edmonton. They won the gold in Nagano. And then in 2002, he became my color commentator for Salt Lake after he retired. And we also did 2006 in Torino. So we became good friends and really good colleagues as well. And then in 2000, Kurt Harnett did cycling with me, and we did 2 Olympics as well, 2000, 2004. And then later, he came back and we did Paris. So it was, you make friends with people and really have great relationships. I also had Clara Hughes in 2008. And of course, she's the most decorated Olympian in Canada ever, both summer and winter. So I had her for cycling in 2008. And so these are still people I stay connected with. And like Clara did a really beautiful goodbye to me in my retirement, did a nice interview, and it was really great. So it was always, it was fun to meet these people because they achieved a lot, right? In order to be a color commentator, you almost always had to be a gold medalist or a high achiever. And then in my last couple of Olympics doing bobsleigh was Helen Upperton, who was a silver medalist from 2010. And she was great too. And she's won awards for her broadcasting. She's still doing it with CBC, and she's fabulous. So it was always fun to meet those folks and hear their stories and get the insight into the sports you might not otherwise get. Because as you said, with sports like cycling and bobsleigh, skeleton, and also a luge, which I all covered, the people who are color commentators, they have to educate people because nobody's watching it in between Olympics. So there might be a 4-year gap. Somebody's never seen it or doesn't remember how it works. And so you're doing that kind of education as you go. It's not like you have to do that for hockey. In hockey, it's a whole different thing, right, for Canadians. But in all these other sports, you do. And actually, who was my other skeleton color commentator was, his name just escaping right now, but he hosts The Amazing Race.
Oh, okay, yeah.
John Montgomery. Allison just yelled it at me. John Montgomery.
Hey, Allison, don't be so
Thanks,
nosy.
Allison. Good job. But it was, so John Montgomery was great. We just did one Olympics together. We did 2018, and he's gone on to, I mean, that's amazing that he's doing The Amazing Race. That's so cool. He's such a great guy, really good guy.
You mentioned Mark Lee. I would imagine there's probably times where you cross paths with Don Whitman.
Yes.
Or with Brian Williams.
Yep. Brian hosted the first few Olympics I did. Don Whitman also as well. He was doing, I think, was he doing the stadium? Yeah, I think he did the stadium events back in the day. But I remember one memory with Don Whitman. We were at 96, and Atlanta is like so hot and humid. It's just an insane weather there. And we, as a group of announcers, so there's about 15 of us, we met at the hotel. We were going to head down to the broadcast center to have a look at our space. And so we said, we're going to meet in the hotel, and we're going to walk over to the transportation area to get us back down there. So we're walking along there, and it's cooking. We're all sweating like crazy. And Whitman says, "You think those guys at NBC are walking 5 blocks to go to the buses? No, they got limos picking them up." And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, he's probably right, but I didn't care. But Whitman was not happy about that.
Well, he's probably sweating from his eyebrows. You see those things?
Yes, absolutely. They had a shelf of their own.
Those eyebrows. Holy cow. They need supporting beams and stuff like that. That was something.
Yeah, he was a great guy. I mean, a fantastic announcer for many, many years, and just really, really helpful to young broadcasters.
I understand we have something in common. You and Allison and my wife Jody and me all love watching home reno shows.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Especially when you're in the middle of it, right? We redid our main floor. Is it 10 years ago? I'm just, yeah. Allison says yes. So in the middle of that, I think that's all we watched, HGTV. But I love that stuff.
Oh, I can't get enough of it. I just built a fence. I built a fence on Friday or Thursday. It took me 2 hours.
Wow.
My studio, the whole thing, I rigged up myself. I put cedar and sonopan in my laundry room, so I got less noise coming from the furnace and the laundry coming in here.
Oof.
Little projects and stuff. I just love doing it. And through that and, hosting the show, become friends with Brian Baumler. Have you met Baumler when he's come to town to do some of his rental shows and stuff?
But I've seen lots of his shows. Yeah.
He's a fun guy. And the way he is on the show is exactly the way he is in person. I mean,
That's good to hear.
when the mics are off, he's a little saltier and stuff like that, which I
Yeah.
love. But he's not a TV star. He's a construction guy.
That's good. I mean, he's done amazingly well. I
Yeah.
mean, those shows are always interesting. Some of the things he does, I find him as the genuine article, so to speak.
Well, you see, they got the new Palms and Pines and Palms, the new building Baumler. They've got another resort, and
Oh, really?
yeah, they're doing all kinds
Wow.
of stuff, and it's crazy the empire that they're
No
building.
kidding. He's really taken off.
Jody and I went down to Cerullamar right after it opened. We were there 3 days after the grand opening, and 2 weeks before COVID shut the world down.
Ooh, good timing.
Yeah. So, and it was pretty cool. Brian picked us up from the airport across from South Andros to North Andros, picked us up with his son Q in the boat.
Oh, nice.
I was joking. The handyman
Wild.
picked us up at the little dock where the boat. We were supposed to come to the other airport, but somehow, anyway, the things all got all
It helps
figured up.
when you know a guy. That's good.
Yeah. Well, he had been in on the show the previous fall for the Reno show. And
Right.
I said to him, I was obviously talking about the island of Brian. And I
Right.
said, don't be surprised if my wife and I end up, on your island one of these days. He goes, okay, I'll take that as a threat. I said, okay. And sure enough, in February, we were down there, but yeah, it's been pretty cool. And they're building even more stuff down there and really contributing to the area of South Andros.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you
That's
a handy guy? Do you do any stuff yourself, or do you?
Well, Patrick has just bought a house a year ago, and I've been over at his place trying to help him sort things out, put in new flooring, and we built a front deck on his house this year. And I'm doing a rain garden in his backyard so the water doesn't flow everywhere. So it's been good. I probably have less to do at my house now because my house is mostly done. That's Allison with a comment. But I do have to do some renos on my pergola. I got to finish it before the winter. Yeah, so I'm pretty handy, actually. I'm much more handy than I would have ever thought I would be, to be honest, because certainly was never in my wheelhouse as a young man to be swinging the hammer.
Yeah. When you retired, obviously conversations were had, planning was done, and all of the things that go along with it. But Allison hasn't retired.
No,
she's is she still involved in theater, or is it all public speaking now?
it's all public speaking now. She, I think up till 3 years ago, she still produced a children's show at the Fringe with her friend Elaine Dunbar. And then a couple of years ago, she said, I'm getting to the point where I'm just too busy and I can't neglect my clients to do this little project in the summer. So Elaine took it over. But she's very, very busy. And that's one of the reasons she wanted to keep me busy, because she says, I'm not intending to retire. She's a couple of years younger than me as well. So she wants to keep going until she's 75, just keep rocking the public speaking. And she's been extremely successful. So it's like, she loves doing it. She's on a mission, you know what I mean? Like, and I think when it's not a job, but it's a mission, then you're kind of, you're into it. You're doing all you can. So,
and you're kind of teaming up with her to stay busy and stuff.
Yeah, I think she gets a lot of requests for media training. So I've done a lot of training of staff at CBC, working with a lot of young people on announcing and presentation, that sort of thing. So from the other side of it, people are wondering, well, when I have to go on TV or on the radio, how do I present myself and what are the best practices? So that's something that many of Alice's clients have asked about. So we're going to come up with a program for that and see how that flies. I mean, I've sort of given lots of people free advice over the years. So if I can charge a little bit for it, good for me.
Yeah, good for you. And charge for your public speaking. I found out recently, I did a podcast with Danny Hooper and found out that Danny Hooper's been making a very good living. All of these charity auctions and whatnot, the things that I've been doing for free for the last 35, 40 years.
Yep. Well, at CBC, I could not charge for those. I did lots of emceeing and hosting and that sort of thing, and we weren't allowed to charge. Everything was free. But now I can, and I've had a few people. Yeah, I'm doing a few things coming up in October, so people are happy to pay for the most part. It's it's like anything else. It's a budget, right? You got to rent a hall. You got to get the sound equipment. You got to get the food. and you got to get somebody up there to MC it and do it well. I mean, the best advertisement for a good MC is a lousy MC. So once you've had somebody who's not very good at it, you think, I probably should get somebody so this evening goes much better.
Yeah. Okay. So media training. Where do I sign up for that? Is it
Well, we'll see what you can do. Yeah.
markconnolly.ca?
Yep.
All right. If I haven't figured it out by now, maybe I do need some media training. I think we're gonna. Oh, you know what I was gonna do is we're probably gonna have to do another podcast because I wanted to actually go through all of the cities, all of the countries that you did Olympic coverage in, and
Okay.
I wanted to go through and just have you bring up stuff from each city. But
Okay.
I mean, we'll do that another time. Spend another hour on it. But I just wondered, it kind of made me wonder, Allison not retiring, you stepping into a different vein of the same sort of work with markconnolly.ca, but as a retired person and having the time to basically do what you want when you want. Do you have a bucket list, like a travel bucket list, or have you already gone to all the places?
I don't have a bucket list because you're right. I have gone to a lot of places. I've gone everywhere, almost everywhere in the world, at least part of the world, right? I've been to North and South America. I've been to Europe. I've been to Asia. I have been to Africa as well, to South Africa. I've been to Russia. I would love to go back to Africa. I haven't, because I didn't really get a chance to see much of Africa. And Africa, I know, is multiple countries. So there's all kinds of different experiences you could have. And I just went to South Africa, and that was for a triathlon.
Yeah.
So I would love to go to a place like Kenya or someone like that where you might go on a safari. That's kind of one thing I wouldn't mind doing. The rest of the world, I've been so many of the places. We enjoy going to Mexico in the winter. And I would like to learn a little bit of Spanish. I mean, every time I go there, I'm picking up a little bit. So that would be maybe a thing I would like to do. But we're planning maybe next year. We haven't got it, locked down yet. But we'd like to go to the Fringe in Edinburgh. That's an experience I'd like to have. But I don't have a huge list because, as you say, I was able to travel around the world on my job. And very lucky that somebody else is paying the tab for that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that comes in super, super handy where you're able to take Allison on any or all of those trips or some. Or...
Only a couple. She would never come during the Olympics because there's just no opportunity to even have any time to do anything. But she came after Athens, and we had a trip in Greece post Athens, and then she came to China in 2008, which I think was a great time to come because it has changed so much since then, and it was really interesting to have a 2-week holiday in China after those Olympics. So those are the couple things. And then after the Pan Am Games in Toronto, she actually joined me in Toronto, and we went to Montreal for the Just for Laughs festival. So that was kind of fun.
And do you two still surprise each other with destinations for your birthdays?
No, for our anniversary.
Oh, anniversary. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we don't give each other gifts for anniversary. We go on a trip, and it is one person plans it one year and one person plans it the next year, and it is a surprise for the other person. This year was my turn, and I took Allison on a kind of circuitous sort of drive throughout Alberta and ending up in Kelowna to see Blue Rodeo and visiting friends and whatnot along the way, and fun. So that was kind of fun. So I'm not sure what next year will bring, depending on how we organize our other trip to Edinburgh. So we'll see how that goes.
Continued fantastic adventures for you and Allison, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate you having me on.
Reluctantly.
This podcast reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. When you contact them, please tell them you heard about them on the Reluctantly podcast. Don't just sign your renewal. Contact Mike and everyone at ThompsonMortgages.com and make sure you get the next term that works for you.
Reluctantly.